Good afternoon. My name is Mark Cohen. I am the principal at Seneca Valley High School, and it's my honor to welcome you all here today for this press conference, for this discussion about a very important topic. Before we begin, I want to start my comments, and then I'll end my comments with a reminder that this weekend, Seneca Valley High School will be hosting Montgomery County's most recent Health and Wellness Fair. And so if you want more information about the topic we'll be discussing today or other topics related to health and wellness issues facing your children, facing yourself or our community, we hope that you'll consider joining us from 9 to 12 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, May 20th. Again, as I said, my name is Mark Cohen, principal here at Seneca Valley High School. Joining me today, we have Dr. Patricia Kapunan. She is the Montgomery County Public Schools System Medical Officer. We also have Dr. James Bridgers, the Acting Director, Department of Health and Human Services. Mark Hodge, Senior Administrator for School Health Services, Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. Ben Stevenson, Manager, Prevention and Harm Reduction, Department of Health and Human Services. Captain Jordan Satinsky, Montgomery County Police Department. And Benjamin Kaufman, Montgomery County Fire Department. Dr. Kapunan is going to speak with you momentarily, and at the very end of our time, we're going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions. Dr. Kapunan?
Thank you so much, Dr. Cohen, and thank you all for continuing to be part of this journey with our community to fight the youth opioid epidemic. As you all know, overdoses and deaths due to opioids among youth have continued to increase. And it's something that we've been very concerned about this school year. We've moved from the beginning of the school year with our public health and safety partners from spreading awareness to really engaging with our community and what needs to be done next. Today I'd like to speak about new guidance we have, which is actually not new guidance, about how we respond to opioid emergencies in schools. We have had Narcan in every single school in Montgomery County Public Schools since the 2018-2019 school year. We've had emergency procedures in place that are posted in a big yellow card for every single school. And this year we have responded to 15 events saving lives in cases of suspected opioid overdoses. And then the huge majority of those cases, it was the school nurse who took action. So I want to be thankful for our school health services, our public health partners, and our public safety partners who have worked with us across the board. Kids are members of families and communities, and this is all together now, everyone on board to do something about this epidemic. In schools, we've had these procedures, but we haven't until recently had them in a specific guideline just related to opioid overdoses. And what we found this school year is we wanted to be more thoughtful. 15 is too many. About how much Narcan we stock, especially in our larger secondary schools, who gets the training, and where it is placed in school. So this was a requirement that was handed to us by the state, but understanding the trends this year as a group, we really wanted to look at how to best serve our communities, and not just in school walls. Our new guidance really codifies procedures that we've had in place about how, as a school system, we obtain, store, train people, how we check our inventory, down to the procedures of roles and responsibilities when we're responding. There is a new piece in this guideline about personally obtained naloxone, and I'll tell you why. Most overdoses are not happening on school grounds. They're happening out in the community. So it's been a critically important part of this work to educate and empower students and family members, knowing that this is something that we need to address in our walls, but also across the community at large, which is why you see so many of our great partners standing with us here today. We have trained, or our county health department, through their prevention and harm reduction services program, headed by Mr. Stevenson right behind me, has trained hundreds of students at community events on the weekends, which included Narcan training and giving Narcan supplies. We have gone out in the community and trained parents through parent associations, but also our community events. a life-saving medication that is easy to use is a really important part of saving lives right now. So knowing that we have our procedures in the schools, but that our students, family members, and staff may also be taking advantages of opportunity to get trained individually, we felt it was important to address the ability of students to personally carry naloxone. Now, we are continuing to emphasize our established emergency procedures for keeping kids safe while on school campus. It's something that we all work together every day, thinking about the safety and security and health and well-being of our students. But as we are also educating them to recognize, respond to overdoses when they happen outside of our school walls, we understand that this is something our students have been engaged in, wanting to be empowered in, and if they are carrying Narcan in school, we want to let them know that they're not going to get in trouble for that. We're still encouraging everybody to use our established procedures, but we want everyone to be empowered and educated so they can continue this fight not just at school, but outside our school walls. Another incredibly important point I want to make to the community is that it's not just about Narcan and it's not just about opioid overdose. We are doubling down on prevention and a comprehensive strategy against substance abuse that considers the mental health of our entire community. So not just students, but the adult allies that serve them every day. We're thinking hard about how we got here. And how we got here is not is not any one person's fault, but it's something that's going to take a lot of people together to do something about. So thinking about where kids are in our community, where their parents and teachers are in supporting them, how they support each other, and taking care of ourselves is sort of the move we've been going. Many of you have been at our weekend forums around fentanyl, and what those have evolved to, based on what people have been asking us, is folks want skills. They want to be engaged. They don't want to just know, though knowledge is really important. In our last few forums, we've evolved based on input from our community to not just spreading awareness, but to helping people build skills. At our forums, you'll see we have, Dr. Cohen mentioned, we have one this Saturday here at Seneca Valley High School. Opportunities to communicate with experts about how to talk about substance use with your children. How do I talk to my parents? Sessions for youth about mental health. How do I take care of myself given the stress? And therapeutic opportunities too. So we have found that in delivering this message, having opportunities to engage in art therapy, music therapy, hug a therapy dog is just as important as people come forward to do this work. One of the most amazing things, well, I'll tell you two amazing things. One, it's been great to see parents come with their kids and engage in these conversations together. So I strongly encourage our community members to take advantage of these opportunities. And then the second thing that has been an amazing learning point for me is just bringing people together in one space communicates that they're not alone. Mental health, substance use, these issues that are so prevalent right now can make you feel so alone. And reaching out for help, coming forward to get help, reaching to help others is very difficult when you have yet to understand that this is something that is impacting everybody and we're going to need each other to get through it. So this Saturday, especially going into the spring season, where we're celebrating a lot, right, guys? We're celebrating graduations. We're celebrating getting through this school year together. There'll be lots of social opportunities, but also a really important time for parents, families, caregivers, everyone who's kid-facing to talk to our youth about how to be safe right now, how to take that time for joy, take that time for celebration, but given everything else that's happened, how to communicate, how to ask for help when it's needed, and how to be safe. This Saturday, students will have the opportunity to do Narcan training at our health event at Seneca Valley, but I also invite everybody to take advantage of coming to do some art therapy, come do some dance, learn how to come join a session if you want to learn to talk more about mental health. So this is part of our comprehensive, all together now, community-wide effort to think about not just youth opioid overuse and overdoses, but where our youth are, how to help them forward, and how to help all the adult allies that help them forward every day. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take any questions.
You mentioned there were 15, you said, I guess, events, or you specify, so these were overdoses, these were not fatal, correct? People were revived, can you say, like what level of school, middle, high school, elementary school?
So thank you for your question. The question was about the 15 events that I mentioned in which Narcan was deployed. So we administer naloxone as part of our emergency procedures if there's a medical emergency that could possibly be an opioid overdose. So our new guidance actually talks more specifically about what those situations are. But our trained school nurses and staff can do a clinical assessment and decide whether or not to use Narcan in that situation. Anyone who gets Narcan training will get this type of training. These are the signs and symptoms where someone might possibly having an opioid overdose. So we don't always know if that's actually what's happening. But we know if someone's not responding, if they don't look like they're breathing well, if they look pale, that this is something safe that we can try. Another really important point about Narcan is it's an incredibly safe medication, and if you are unresponsive due to another medical condition, it's still safe to give, which is one reason why it's very acceptable to have it now over the counter and for people with non-medical training to use it, because it is safe to use even if it's not a confirmed overdose. So what I can say about those 15 events is they were events in which someone was acting in a way or non-responding, having problems with breathing, that the situation suggested that they might benefit from Narcan. And yes, there were no fatalities in any of those events, and they happened sort of across the whole county. I think our police partners will tell you that there's been no zip code that has been unimpacted. What I like to say is that, it's not everywhere, but we need to be prepared for it to be anywhere.
If I can follow up, I want to be clear. My understanding was, as of, I want to say, late January or early February, there had been 11 times when Narcan was deployed at schools or for students. Now you're saying there are a total of how many? 15?
15.
So since that time and now, when the decision was made that the FDA said, okay, it's going to be over the counter, did that speed this decision along? What did it take to get to this point? And what was the policy before? If a student was found to have Narcan, what kind of trouble? What was the policy?
So actually there was not a specific policy related to Narcan. When you look at the regulations that we have about students carrying emergency medication, they're really written for kids who are prescribed an emergency medication for a known medical condition, right? You have a peanut allergy, and there are certain steps you have to go through for self-carrying your EpiPen, or self-carrying your albuterol if you're diagnosed with asthma, and there simply wasn't a precedent or any specific language about carrying an emergency medication that you might be administering to someone else, another minor. So we did not have policy or specific regulation about it. At the same time, even in January, we were already training students about opioid overdose, what to do in the case of an emergency. With our health department partners, that's something that will continue to be available, regardless of whether or not it's over the counter. The cost may be prohibitive for some youth that may really be great beneficiaries of that medication. So the fact that the FDA status didn't really affect this at all. We were already moving towards making sure youth were aware, because they are critical responders who may be present when this is happening outside of school walls. The data about when we had our first forum in January, at that time we had 11 school-based administrations of Narcan. That's what it refers to, administrations on school property, and since then there have been 4 additional instances of that happening. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it helps. And is that all by staff, or did that involve someone with their own Narcan?
I'll invite Mr. Hodge, our Director of School Services, or Senior Administrator.
Sure, thank you. Mark Hodge, I'm the Senior Administrator for School Health Services. So of the 15 events where Narcan was administered, the vast majority of them were done by the school nurse. So, and that's part of our emergency plan. We want, even in the case of asking or allowing students to carry their own Narcan, we still want them to follow the emergency plan, because it's not enough just to give Narcan. You may have to provide breathing assistance and wait for EMS to arrive. So that's certainly something we want to make sure that we do. But in all cases, except for one, it was either a school nurse or MCPS staff. In one case, EMS arrived in time to provide that, so of the 15.
And was that the one at McDonald's?
No, I'm only speaking about things that we're doing on-site on school campuses, not off-site.
Okay. And in terms of students knowing that now it's, that yes, officially it's okay, if you have Narcan, you can have it with you. Do they already know that? How were they informed? How are they being informed? And when precisely was this decision made?
The new guidance was signed by the superintendent on May 1st, 2023. So this is the first of many steps as we communicate about our forums. We also, since starting this work, have been active on social media as well as having online resources on our website. So it will be a multi-tiered approach to making sure that all school staff and students know. And we find that students have to get information in many different ways. I'm sure our principal can attest to. So we are going to use a multi-tiered approach to making sure that they know. I mean, the students have been talking about this to us for a long time. So I think we have been pretty transparent in this is something that we're encouraging for students, and a policy is underway that will be supportive.
Okay, so the agreement was signed on the 1st. When was the school population told about that?
So the school population has not been told. We're in the final stages of translating it for our entire community. So there are just a couple of steps that have to happen after it gets signed by the superintendent to make it fully accessible for everyone in the school community.
Thank you.
So a follow-up question. So as far as the message to students themselves, do you want every single student arming themselves with Narcan? What is your hope as far as the level of students carrying it on a given day in a given school? And is this feasible for like elementary school? What's your target desire for this to work?
So a couple of things, and the question was about, what is the target, the end game in terms of what does student use look like? Our message has been very simple and very consistent. When talking to parents and kids, we want them to know about the risks of counterfeit pills. We want them to know that illicit fentanyl is out there, and we want to talk about prevention as well as how to respond to an opioid overdose. What I tell parents is this is something everybody should know about, and you need to decide whether or not this is something that training you want to undergo, which is different than actually keeping Narcan with you and when you have your Narcan with you. If you think about other emergency procedures, in my heart I would love everybody to be trained in CPR. Is that reasonable for everybody down to elementary school? No. Like, what is the risk? What is the capacity to act? Knowing that part of the Narcan training isn't just about using the nasal spray, which is easy, but it's how do you help? How do you call for help? What else is going on? So there's definitely a sort of developmentally appropriate stage to be able to act on this. But I want all parents to know about it. So not only can they make an individual risk decision, they can talk to their kids. And older teenagers, they can make individual risk decisions about whether or not this is something they want to train in and whether or not they need to carry it. The students should know that we have Narcan in every single school. So this is something that they get worried about on school property. Calling a trusted adult, engaging our already established emergency action procedures, that is all happening and can happen while you're on school property. So I think thinking about youth use, student youth, is really going to depend. We want to get the message out to everybody. This is what this is, and we want to offer training to everybody who wants it, and let people know how to get it. But whether or not you go through that training, whether or not you carry Narcan, and when you carry it is really going to be up to the individual. But first and foremost is getting the information out. Why would you need it? And doubling down on prevention. So we hope that no one will need it.
So you don't have any target then for how many students you would like to?
No, the purpose is not to depend on students to save lives on school property. The purpose is to have students, in the guideline, we have very specific regulations about the minimum number of staff who need to be trained, how we are going to train them exactly. You know, every staff has an awareness training, but not everybody gets the hands-on training. So it's explicit about how we maintain those training records, how we inventory the Narcan, how we check it for viability, how we replace it when it's used, how we report. So all of that is a very school-specific procedure. The guideline that allows students to carry it really speaks to their ability to independently get trained, if that's something they decide they want to and need to do.
Where's the Narcan found in schools?
There's always Narcan in the health room, but where it is in a school is going to depend on the administrator. So I don't know if Dr. Cohen wants to speak to it, but every school is different in terms of its layout and where people might need to go. We often also have other events happening in school, after-school activities, so we are leaving it to the individual administrators to decide on where strategically to place the Narcan. It does make sense to place it with other emergency devices and medications like our epinephrine and our AEDs, but it might not be a total overlap. Did you want to comment about planning Narcan use in schools?
Sure. This is still very much very new for all of us, right? We have Narcan available right now in our health suite. We've been having conversations about the possibility of including them in all of our AED boxes, in our Stop the Bleed boxes, places where we can feel reasonably certain that if we need the Narcan in a hurry, we can get to it in a hurry. We also have staff members we know who have made the choice to be trained and who may have Narcan on their person. Our security team has been trained, our administrative team has been trained, our health services team have all been trained as well. And so there's ready access in the building should we need it in the case of an emergency. And our staff all know where to go if they need to find Narcan quickly in an emergency as well. We've trained them as well. Even if they haven't been trained to use the Narcan, they've been trained to know where to go and who to find.
Quick follow-up on that. Many of the high schools in particular are sprawling campuses. How important is it that students now know that they can use Narcan if they have it with them? And how do you maximize the impact of where to locate it? Are you encouraging teachers as well to carry Narcan with them?
Sure. So I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything right now. I'm asking people to consider what they think is best for them and what they think is best for their children. What I can tell you is that we have a staff, certain members of our staff who have been trained and who know exactly where to go to find Narcan if they need it. To your first question, I think it's critically important that our students know what to do and how to respond in an emergency. Right now we're in a crisis. And we've seen that not just in our community, but we see that around the world. And for us to be able to tell our students, don't be afraid to respond, don't be afraid to save a life, I think is one of the most important messages that we can share, especially to our high school students. You're right, this is a very large building, and it's entirely possible that it could take me much longer to get to a student in crisis than it could a student peer who may have a parent who chose to train their child in Narcan and provide them Narcan. I'd rather quibble later with a young person who's still alive than worry about whether it was carried or not. So I think that answers your question.
Do you know of other school systems that have done the same thing? I'm aware of Arlington County.
So that's outside of my expertise, so I'll turn that back to Dr. Kapunan.
In thinking about this policy, we did reach out to LA Unified. I'm not familiar with the details of Arlington's self-carry policy. I hadn't heard any details about that, but LA Unified had passed something in March, and as soon as they did that, we engaged in conversations with them about what that might look like for Montgomery County Public Schools. I wanted to have two people chime in on the question about, how do we do this strategically? We have Konstantinsky from our CEOs, but we also have Ben Stevenson from our prevention and harm reduction. So just thinking about what is the goal for students and youth, he is the person who does a lot of the direct youth-facing education, harm reduction, and Narcan training specifically. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about sort of the role of harm reduction and equipping kids versus just equipping everybody with that only as a strategy.
Yeah, so again, Ben Stevenson, Prevention and Harm Reduction Manager for Department of Health and Human Services. So our main message is really bringing awareness because the drug market is naturally saturated with these counterfeit pharmaceutical pills, and educating kids that they can't necessarily trust their eyes to know if that pill is laced with fentanyl or not, because 10 times out of 10, it is laced with fentanyl. And so we're clear on that message. And then going beyond that, we educate them on the fact that it's okay to carry Narcan just in case, you might not be actively engaging, but you may know someone who is actively engaging in substance use, and you want to be able to save their life, or just in case they go down that path of using one of those counterfeit pills. But also the importance of contacting 911, and the fact that they're protected under the Good Samaritan law, because if you're actively assisting someone with a medical emergency, you're protected under that law. And so the message is pretty much clear. Of course, we try to encourage young people to not engage in that lifestyle and things like that, but some do, unfortunately, and we just try to equip them with the skills, the knowledge, and the tools that they need to hopefully keep them alive and give them that second opportunity to pursue the longevity of their potential lives and things like that. And helping a friend, I think, is very important, and we try to push that message pretty clear.
I can ask you, since you work directly with students, what are they telling you about their willingness to use Narcan, to be trained, and then to hopefully inform you so that you know if you've got a situation in any particular school setting?
Yeah, so, we engage with a lot of young people. We actually have a youth ambassador program in the county, and they're very forthcoming with information about, peers and what they're seeing and things like that. And so I've come in contact with a lot of young people who have been through Narcan training, who have walked around with Narcan on a regular basis. They've accessed it either from us directly or from one of our partners and things. And so they just want to be prepared, because they like, hey, I know someone who's dealing with opioid use disorder. I know a friend who has challenges. I have a family member who has challenges, and they just want to be prepared and know the right thing to do. And that's really what we're just trying to do, is just give them the right tools that they can use to just help save a life. And anyone can actually go through that training and be knowledgeable in that case. But I think as of yet, the young people are very high focus right now because of what's been going on as of late. And we want to make sure that all are aware, equipped, and knowledgeable of how to respond to that incident.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan Statinsky. I'm the captain of our Community Engagement Division for the County Police, run the School Resource Officer, Community Engagement Officer program. All of our Community Engagement Officers currently carry Narcan and have gone through training, as well as the majority of our police officers. We look at Narcan as something that can, just like Mr. Stevenson said, it's a helping item. It's not a hurting item. We're here to help and do as much as we can. This is not, we're not using this for anything more than to make sure our kids stay safe and alive. That's what we want. Fentanyl has been many, many years in the making as far as the arc of our society and where we are now, and how easily it is to get this drug. And kids are telling us that they're using it because they know fentanyl's in there. It's not a surprise to them. They want to try it and see what happens. They just don't understand that it's almost like Russian roulette. Like one pill, even half a pill, could end up with them deceased. Narcan's been a savior in a lot of ways. There are some out there that look at Narcan and say, hey, we're perpetuating a problem. I think the drug in and of itself, the original drug, the fentanyl, heroin, all those, that's what started this, not Narcan. Narcan's more or less our savior in helping us defeat this. And as many times as we have given it out to people, we have seen people go the straight and narrow and move on with their lives in a very positive way. The steps the school system takes, as well as our partners from fire rescue and the health department, have really been impactful in this community. And we're still working forward, as you can tell by not only this press conference, but other events that we've held around the county, up and down county, over the last 5-6 months, targeting the fentanyl issue. Any other questions?
What are your biggest challenges in implementing these guidelines?
I think that's a you thing.
Yeah, so I want to be clear, thanks for that question about the challenges in implementing these guidelines, is that these guidelines are just for schools, and they inform how we do emergency response in schools. And in the event that students, youth, or even adults have personally obtained Narcan on their person, we want to make sure that the fear of getting in trouble for just having it is not a deterrent to being able to get trained and utilize that resource. We want to let them know that we are encouraging them to get educated, since the majority of overdoses are not happening in school. So these guidelines that are for school only, and what our school procedures are, including making sure that kids don't get in trouble if they've gotten training elsewhere, is really just addressing what's happening in schools. And we're lucky to have our partners. I don't know if you wanted to come talk a little bit. You know, in the community, it's typically 911, fire and rescue, the police who are responding to youth overdoses. So if you want to give a little bit of that.
Sure.
Viewpoint.
Yeah, I'm Ben Kaufman with Montgomery County Fire Rescue EMS. So we're responding to about 60 opiate overdoses a month. That's across all ages and in all locations, not specific to schools. The people who are revived from an opiate overdose often report that they were not even intending to take an opiate. That indicates that the drug supply that's out there, and we're talking about marijuana and vape pens and edibles, are contaminated with an opiate, right? Opiates are particularly harmful because they cause people to slow their breathing, even stop breathing, and can die as a result of that. So having Narcan on hand, in addition to all the other emergency procedures, getting 911 started, providing rescue breathing, all very, very important. And the Narcan policy that the school's adopted is very much in line with where we need to be.
If I could piggyback on the challenges question. You mentioned earlier that the policy was signed on May 1st. It's been more than 3 weeks, and you said that one of the challenges was the translating for our communities. How much of the challenge is that language barrier?
I mean, it's not a challenge to get it translated, but translation isn't the only barrier to getting information out to everybody who needs it in a culturally competent way, as well as in an age-appropriate way. When we have a new regulation that comes through MCPS, I mean, as far as the time frame for this going through, it went through a lot faster. Our OGC was very helpful in expediting it, knowing how important this was to our community, but it does have to go through steps after it gets signed. And translation is only one of those steps. But our multi-tiered approach isn't just about making sure it's in the right language, because it still is a regulatory document, which is why having outreach like this, we see tons of people come to our forums, so we've been talking about it at our forums as well. We've had great partnerships with the parent associations of Montgomery County, so we've been getting this fentanyl message out in many, many different ways, and definitely we have learned that just translating it and putting it on our website is not enough. So we will be continuing to engage at many different levels in terms of making sure people continue to get the message, not just about fentanyl, but all the other things that we have started to talk about. You mentioned, being concerned also about marijuana's detrimental effects, about vaping, about mental health. I'm really pleased today to have our Acting Director of Public Health, Dr. Bridgers, who has been such a great partner in thinking sort of globally about the impact of this on the youth of Montgomery County and how we get through this work together. I don't know if you wanted to make any brief comments, sir.
Sure. Good morning. James Bridgers, Acting Director of the Department of Health and Human Services. So we continue to work collaboratively with our great partners, Dr. Cohen, Dr. Kapunan, our MCPS partners, our fire and rescue, our public safety. But I remind you that we just didn't start this journey. We actually started back in January when we saw the increase in deaths or overdoses in the community. And our health officer, Dr. Keisha Davis, our Chief Medical Officer, talked about a primary, secondary, and tertiary plan. We continue along that line to work with Dr. Kapunan and look at those resources that are available. Mr. Hodge, Mr. Stevenson have been very instrumental. But I remind you, for the past 3 years, we've been saturating our community with resources regarding COVID. So if you will, imagine replace the rapid test kits that we deployed and we worked with our partners to get in the hands of those individuals who needed them. We've replaced them with Narcan. It's about access. It's about increased community resources. And Dr. Kapunan has been a great visionary in working with us in the Department of Health and Human Services. And so I just wanted to leave you with that thought. So when you think about the strategy and all of the initiatives and the policies that we craft, we work as a community of practice to ensure that those resources are in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bridgers. And then just to also thank our county leadership, a major piece of advocacy that needs to be done is for more treatment resources for youth. That is a missing piece of the puzzle that our county leadership has elevated to the state to advocate for more resources, specifically in Montgomery County, but for the state of Maryland as well. There's like a huge mismatch between the need and between the ability to get treatment. So we are talking about overdoses, we're talking about prevention, but when kids need treatment, especially because fentanyl is such a powerful opioid, and there is a gap in medication-assisted therapies. Having targeted and dual diagnosis treatment programs for youth is an area that we really need a lot of advocacy and support. We just simply don't have enough resources. So we're also thankful to our county leadership who has taken this up to the state level to ask for more resources for treatment specifically for youth. Any more questions?
Dr. Cohen, quick question. Could you paint a picture for us about the abuse of opioids in the school setting? I mean, you still hear stories of kids going into bathrooms and it's full of smoke. Like that happens in some schools. How is this happening in schools? Kids just handing stuff to each other during lunch break? How does it manifest itself?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pretend to be an expert when it comes to how students are accessing or using drugs. What I can tell you is I think it's the same way in Montgomery County as it's happening everywhere, right? Students have found ways to access the drugs that they want to access for whatever reason they've chosen or found the need to access them. What's most troubling for me today is not so much the how, although as a principal I can assure you that we've got lots of steps in place to ferret that out and to address. For me right now, what's most important is how we can help our students, our young people, to understand why this is such dangerous behavior, why this is potentially such deadly behavior, why this is behavior that will, not may, but will alter the course of their lives forever. And so I'm not going to guess how individually they may be getting access or using. I think the examples you gave are probably true in many cases. I think what concerns me the most is that we have to stand here today talking about educating our students about this powerful life-saving medication to save lives, right? I wish only that we didn't have to get there. I would like to say, because we're talking about this proliferation in schools, was it last week was Nurses Appreciation? The story I'd really like to see some of you write is the fact that I heard today in this press conference that most of the doses being administered were by heroes, school nurses. And I may have missed it, but I haven't seen that story written yet. And so I'd love to see that story written, because we have school nurses in partnership with Health and Human Services who act the part of heroes every day and don't get recognized. So thank you.
Police department, could you address
Come on over.
the question about, when kids are doing this, they're overdosing, where's it coming from? Is there any investigation that is done at all to figure out how they're getting it? I understand good Samaritan, but just to say, well, we don't know where it's coming from, we just care about the person once they overdose. How do you attack that problem? How's it getting in there? How's it getting to the person? Is there any investigation being done as a result of this problem?
That's a great question. She was asking if there was any investigation being done past us as the police department just interacting with the victim and making sure they're safe. Yes, there is. We rely on community partners. We rely on information we receive from our victims and other such information in order to pursue these investigations. As a matter of fact, Montgomery County Special Investigations Division has done things a little differently than most other jurisdictions as far as investigating these types of incidents, and they take time. Criminal investigations are not quick. The public doesn't always like to talk to us, right? The uniform pushes people away sometimes. So we get information in different ways, and we utilize that to find these people. Sometimes we get lucky, like we make a traffic stop and find a bunch of fentanyl pills. Other times, these criminal investigations bear fruit. They just take a long time. They're not simple. People are giving us stuff. They are telling us things. We are using and leveraging our resources as best we can. And we implore anyone who knows anything about these types of crimes to come and talk to us. Even if it's not direct, we have, you can call you provide information via confidential through our tip line. You can call Crime Solvers. There are all sorts of different avenues to contact us and not even leave a name, and just point us in the right direction. The information you give us may actually be the thing that put the nail in the coffin, basically, and sends us right to the right person or the right group of people. This stuff is coming from all over. It's not just one place. It's not just one person. It's not just one organization. But our folks are working diligently to bring these folks to justice as fast as we can. But again, remember, the criminal justice system is set up to make sure we get the right person put in the right place, and we don't mess that up. And there are a lot of barriers before that, so we have to get it all right, and that does take time. And government speed is like geological time. It's slow. So we're going as fast as we can with what we got.
Are you seeing any patterns in terms of students getting a hold of opioids in your investigations? I mean, you're saying that it's all over, but
Right.
are you seeing any kind of narrower patterns that might indicate how they're getting a hold of it?
The question was, how are students getting a hold of this, and are we seeing any patterns? It's all over the place. It doesn't know any particular age, gender, socioeconomic barrier, nothing. It's coming from anywhere and everywhere. And just like Chief Kaufman said, it's being sprinkled into marijuana. It's being added into other things. So it's all over the place. At this point, there's no reasonable pattern you can discern based on what we're seeing. It's just all over the place.
Can we hear from the nurses? Yeah. That'd be all right. Deep breath.
Thanks, Bob.
So they're not here. They're nervous because I don't think they had any expectations of being in front of cameras. But I do want to make sure to recognize and celebrate. We do have two nurses here right now who serve students every day, and so we'll welcome Carrie and we'll welcome Cheryl to you.
Could we just ask, if you don't mind, like when you think of a school nurse, you think, oh, the kid bumps his knee or scrapes his knee on the playground at recess. But in your mind, did you ever expect to have to deal with this? And what is that like from your point of view?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. My name's Carrie Austri. I'm one of the nurse practitioners at the school-based health and wellness centers. I've been in this job for 7 years, so to answer your question directly, no, this is not something that I thought would be an everyday occurrence. We know in primary health care, we go through questionnaires, we go through screenings. We know that there are pivotal age groups that may succumb to peer pressure or other things. And so when you're in the school setting, it's hard to say no, right? We have that setting that we had, decades ago of just say no. Can that work right now with, the way that kids are integrated with social media and where they're getting their guidance? It's very difficult.
Have you all administered Narcan yourselves?
No, not myself, no.
Ma'am, your point of view on this? Like, what's that? Like when you talk to family and friends and they're like, oh my gosh, we hear kids are overdosing in school on opioids. How do you relate that to them? When, again, you think of a school nurse as maybe helping out with an allergy or a cut or a scrape.
I mean, I think we can all remember being back in high school once upon a time, and it might not have been opioids, but it was something. It was something we all saw that we had access to easily. So I kind of just remind people of that, and then, kind of always gear that towards Narcan and how we're lucky to have such easy access to that.
Are kids willing to talk to you about this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell me about how that goes, and I know every parent listening is going to be like, okay, what do I say? How do I get my kids? So what do you want parents to know, and what are kids telling you?
kids are very open. I mean, they really are. I mean, as long as you're providing an open, safe space, I mean, they really are open to sharing just about anything.
But what are they telling you about this problem? What do they need from us, the adults in the community?
I mean, again, just safe spaces to talk about it and have access to help, basically.
And do you think being able to have the Narcan on them now helps break down some of those barriers?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what are they telling you about their access to the opioids? Are they telling you anything about how they're getting it, what they're seeing?
I mean, I would say students that have shared with me, it's been more of like a family member. I mean, certainly they've tried different substances, but yeah, I'm not hearing where they're getting it, so to speak.
Do you all have any numbers in terms of the prevalence or usage of opioids among this age group, high school, middle school, et cetera?
Or sir, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so when I started my career in the county as a school nurse, my children, I have a high schooler now and a daughter in college. The first thing I say to them now, and one of the hazards of having a school nurse as a parent, is they never got to call out sick or call me to pick them up from school. But now I have talked to them about don't take anything from anyone that you don't know. So I say that every time they leave the house, and they get tired of hearing it, but I don't stop saying it. And I think that's the same thing that we all have to say to our children, to our youth, whether it's here in school or at home, is we don't know what's in anything anymore. So you think you're just getting something that's going to get you slightly high, but it's going to kill you because it's laced with fentanyl or another opioid. That's the important message: is that nothing is safe anymore. Not that it was safe before, but it's even less safe now because you don't know if it's going to kill you, regardless of what you think you're taking. So I tell them, don't take a drink from anyone, don't take a pill from anyone, don't take anything from anyone, and I think that's the message we have to make sure that all of our youth hear.
I just wanted to thank you guys for recognizing our nurses. We have 4 nurses here, and I think thinking about when, we had scrapes and cuts, they are frontline responders, right? So they're responding to medical emergencies every single day, not just related to opioid overdose, but, severe anaphylaxis, when people, when we've had, unfortunately, to deploy our AEDs in those types of events. So thank you so much for recognizing them. But it also underscores the importance of trusted adults in school connectedness. So this is something that was just highlighted by the Surgeon General in his report, and something that's come out in our latest YRBS data, that if kids have trusted adults at school, they do better, right? And everyone you see before you right now is a friendly face that a kid can go to. So that's what I want to highlight. And parents, the most important, right? Parents and families are the ones to be setting clear expectations, letting them know that this is a safe space for support, and we want to all do that together. So thank you so much today for coming. I really appreciate it.
Before you run off, Dr. Cohen, did you have a Narcan in your pocket? Is that what you were holding?
I don't have one in my pocket.
Yeah, it's right here. We have trainers.
Can you also hold that up so we, can see what it looks like?
Do you want to do a quick, what it looks like to deploy it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoever wants to show it.
What's the expiration date on these? How long do they last?
Come show how people look at it.
You might just
Yeah.
hold that up for a minute.
This particular, so it changes. So when it's manufactured, this doesn't expire till February 2024. The school system and Mr. Stevenson, who helps distribute this, is always looking at where the expiration date is. So we don't put any Narcan into schools that's going to expire next month. We make sure it's at least a year out, and then we monitor when the school nurses are really good about checking expiration dates and making sure that they're replaced prior to their expiration. So this one's not till February of next year. Yep. So each of the Narcan dispensers are just a nasal spray. And so it's one dose. So you put this in your nostril, push the red plunger, and the spray goes up. Generally, that helps and wakes the person up fairly quickly. Sometimes you have to give a second dose if that first one didn't help. And occasionally that happens. But the...
How many doses in that?
There's just one dose per plunger, yep. There's 2 doses per kit. Yep.
I'm a MoCo parent of 2 high school kids. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Ditto. Thank you.
Thank you.